do you really believe that 100% or roughly most all human beings have the capacity to lose faith? Along the lines of there's plenty of human beings who can't add 1 and 1 to 2. I mean, lots of them can, but really, what percentage of people do you think have the capacity to really question their faith and move away from faith?
I can't say how many. I mean, I just feel that there's an awful lot more could than do, and that's enough for me. That's enough to inspire me to have a go. I don't want to claim that everybody would. I mean, I saw yesterday or day before a film of a woman on YouTube who was holding forth. I think she's some kind of an actress, and she wanted to say, "Do dogs have brains?" And her argument was, well, they can't talk. And then she said, well, I guess they can walk, but only because we tell them how to. And then she said, well, I guess I guess dogs are God's creatures. I love you, Jesus. There are people like that who they have the vote.
Okay.
But I do think that an awful lot more people are convertible, including, by the way, a large number of members of Congress. It cannot be true. There are 535 members of the US Congress. It simply cannot be true that every one of them, possibly with one exception, it cannot be true that every one of them has a religious faith. That's statistical nonsense. A substantial number of them are lying, and they're lying because they know they have to lie, or they think they have to lie in order to get elected by people like this woman who thought dogs didn't have brains. But the number of people in the United States, polls suggest the number of people who lack religious faith is now about 22%. That's a very substantial number. And it's time politicians realize that.
Okay, next question, please. And again, I just want to state that just please ask your question.
When religious people stand on the book of their religion and atheists can stand on science as their platform, how do you bring people from religion and their book to the scientific platform and have them understand that view rather than always arguing their point by giving you scripture?
I think the question is, would it be a better way to just promote science rather than be negative? Is that the point?
Well, how do you promote science to those who may not be willing?
Yes. Well, science is wonderful. I mean, I think one of the problems with promoting science is that many people promote it as useful, which of course it is, and you can't deny that. That's extremely important. But it's also wonderful, and it's sort of the Carl Sagan approach to promoting science, as opposed to what I call the non-stick frying pan approach. The space enterprise could be sold by the fact that a byproduct of it was the development of non-stick frying pans, but that's not a good reason for going into space. A good reason for going into space is something more poetic than that. It's more the Carl Sagan. The usefulness of science is part of it, but inspire people with the poetry of science. Science is the poetry of reality. And I think another problem with teaching science is that it's often taught as if you can't do science unless you actually are going to practice it in the lab. This is the Bunsen-Burner school of science teaching. Yes, it's important that we have young scientists who learn how to use the Bunsen-Burner and all the other apparatus of science. But just as you can appreciate music without playing an instrument, you don't actually have to do 5-finger exercises on the piano. You don't have to actually play the violin or something in order to appreciate and enjoy music and even be expert in music. So science can be taught in a non-practical way.
Okay. Question, please.
Thank you for your talk. There's quite a few of my fellow students here tonight from Lewis and Clark Law School that are part of the Secular Legal Society. is in your experience working with other people, what can we do as future lawyers to help the secular movement?
Well, you could be honest. As all the best lawyers are, there are some of my best friends are lawyers. There are major things you could do. You could fight against the tax exemption, the automatic tax exemption of religious organizations. Which is a scandal in both Britain and America. It's true that certainly in Britain, if you want to get charitable status for that means tax-exempt status for your charity, all you have to do is be religious, be a church of some sort, and you go through like a breeze, not a problem. I set up a foundation, and it took me 2 years to get it given charitable tax-exempt status, for promoting reason and science. And I got a letter from the British Charity Commission, which is the body that decides this. And the letter said, please inform us how science benefits humanity. In America, you get tax-exempt status simply if you call yourself reverend. May I invite everybody in this room to define themselves as a reverend and apply for tax-exempt status. And everybody in the country should do it and kill this once and for all. It's an absolute nonsense that this happens.
Next question, where are we? Who has the mic? Could you stand up, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
So I was wondering, the DSM makes an exception for religious visualizations as not being hallucinations. And so, psychology is a field that's steeped in science. I'm wondering, how can we rid psychology of that sort of cancerous ideology?
I didn't quite understand. Did you use an abbreviation?
For the DSM, the Diagnostics...
What's DSM?
Diagnostic Statistics Manual. It's what the psychologists use to make diagnoses for mental illness.
I don't know about that, obviously, or I wouldn't have queried it. So this is a diagnostic test for what?
It's a manual. It's what psychologists use. I'll give you. May I answer this question?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Chapter 9 of my book. It's right there. A manual for creating atheists. We must remove the exemption for if somebody is suffering from a delusion and they happen to share that with other people and they put this moniker or this tag on it called religion, they're granted an exception. And so in my book, I detail exactly how we can. That's the number one thing that we can do to help to fight the faith virus. Next question. Could you please stand up?
You talk about promoting science versus denigrating religion, which I understand is probably a more useful tact. But given religion's moral transgressions, shouldn't we be taking a stronger arm against religious activities versus more, so science is good, pointing out, wouldn't it be more beneficial to point out how religion is bad, is hurtful?
I suppose you should take a strong stand where religion actively interferes with other people's lives. You probably shouldn't go in and interfere with people's right to be religious. But I should have thought you'd be right to go in and to stop people interfering in other people's lives. So if a religion, well, the example of the Florida school that I told you about, where a religious parent actually interfered in the education of other children, that's something we should fight intensely. I would like to see more consciousness of the rights of children, not to be indoctrinated, not to be manipulated just because their parents happen to belong to a certain religion. I don't think I want to have sort of police swooping in to seize children and take them away from their parents. But I do think it would be nice if we all had our consciousness raised about, and the consciousness raising is a feminist slogan, which is very, the feminists did brilliant consciousness raising, so that without anything dictatorial, they made us realize when we use sexist language, for example, we should realize when we use religionist language, when we, for example, label children with the religion of their parents. It should be not a criminal offense to call a 4-year-old child a Catholic child, but it should be something that makes everybody wince when they hear. And a very easy way to do that consciousness raising is to talk to people about an existentialist child, or a logical positivist child, or a postmodernist child. Nobody would ever dream of doing that. And yet we, all of us, quite happily listen to people talking about, oh, Catholic child, Muslim child. There is no such thing as a Catholic child or a Muslim child. There is a child of Catholic parents and a child of Muslim parents. It's consciousness raising, not dictatorial swooping in and making illegal. You shouldn't make it illegal to talk about a Catholic child. You just make people ashamed to talk about a Catholic child.
Next question, please.
Hey, earlier you mentioned something about like evolution being obviously the correct thing, and there was some laughter, and you asked why, and we said America. And it's kind of well known that in a way we're the laughing stock of the rest of the civilized world as far as being behind and saying, evolution is science, period.
So what's your question?
Sorry. I apologize. So I guess what I'm wondering is how do you think that this impacts us as a country, and do you think do you see it improving in the near future?
This country is beyond any doubt the leading scientific nation in the world. And you have achieved this, I congratulate you, you've achieved this despite being held back by nearly 50%, more than 40% of the population who, according to Gallup polls, believe that the world is less than 10,000 years old. This is symptomatic of an astonishing poverty of scientific education. And as I say, in spite of that, this country is by far the leading scientific nation in the world. Some of you may have heard me say before that to believe that the world is only 10,000 years old is equivalent to believing that the width of North America is 8 yards.
Good. Okay.
That's what you get if you calculate it out.
Where's the mic? Who has the mic? Okay, yes, sir.
Yes, I'm Richard. What are your thoughts about the Sunday Assembly?
About what?
The Sunday Assembly.
Okay. I think, this started in Britain, I think, didn't it? And it was an idea to take over churches, or at least assembly halls, and have non-religious Sunday services where you don't do prayers, but you do things like lectures and, I don't know what else you do. Singing? Do you sing secular hymns? I think that might be a bit grisly, actually, a bit embarrassing, singing secular hymns. But the idea of having seminars, discussions, lectures about interesting subjects, that seems to me to be a good thing to do it while a dwindling number of people are going to church. They really are dwindling in Britain, except to mosques, unfortunately. Plenty of people do that.
Yeah, almost anything would be a better use for a church than a mosque than to have a service in there.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Next question. Where's the mic? In the back. Yes, sir.
So aside from the hypersensitivity to Islam, leftists and liberals have another problem that's particularly bad in this city, and that's this obsession with alternative medicine and homeopathy and mysticism and other baseless beliefs. How do we talk to these people?
Well, yes, I mean, alternative medicine needs to be evaluated by the same criteria as medicine does. The same double-blind controlled trials need to be done to evaluate homeopathy, acupuncture, laying on of hands, whatever it is. And if they pass the test with flying colours, they will cease to be alternative. Right. They will simply become medicine. I mean, there's a very good herbal remedy which comes from bark of some tree. We call it aspirin. And it works. And that has moved from being herbal medicine to being medicine. If double-blind trials showed that homeopathy worked, that would become medicine. That's difficult, mind you, because kind of by definition it's very hard to imagine that happening, since the dose is pure water and the experimental is pure water. It's hard to imagine that a double-blind trial ever could produce a result. They do have a get-out there. They say, well, although there's not a trace left of the active molecule in the water. By the way, James Randi has a lovely calculation. Because, you know, they dilute and dilute and dilute and dilute, and they have this belief that the more you dilute, the better it gets. And James Randi calculated that for some of the most allegedly effective homeopathic remedies, there is one molecule of the active substance in a volume of water equal to the volume of the solar system. Well, the get-out is that they say, well, it doesn't matter that there are no molecules there because water has a memory. And by shaking the water up, originally with a reasonable quantity of molecules, and then diluting it, every time you shake it, you sort of potentize the memory of the water. Now, if that were true, the discoverer of it, the homeopath who discovered it, would win not only the Nobel Prize for medicine, but the Nobel Prize for physics, because this would be a brand new physical principle which physicists are utterly ignorant about at present. It would be a fabulous discovery. Because of this, homeopaths all over the world are beavering away doing double-blind trials to try to win the Nobel Prize for physics. Like hell they are.
All right, we're going down to the end. I think we have time for a couple more questions. Where's the mic? Who has the mic? The mic, yes, sir, in the back.
Hey, I had a quick question. In all of your travels, have you ever met someone that you ran into them and you thought, wow, they're so mentally unstable, they're so criminally insane that they need religion just to not go around killing people?
I have met, I was once on a radio talk show, quite often I'm actually, and I get these rather interesting call-ins. I got one from Texas, and he said, I won't try and do the accent, he said, if I didn't believe in God, I would go straight out and murder my neighbor. And I said, I don't think, no, surely you wouldn't. And he said, yes, I would. I think it's Herb Silverman, when he meets somebody who says something like that, he says, well, I don't think I want to know you anymore. If the only thing that's stopping you killing, stealing, raping is your belief in that God will punish you, you're just not the kind of person I want to know. I think perhaps that's the nearest I can get to answering your question.
All right, where's the mic? Where are we with the mic? Yes, young lady.
Yeah, thank you for coming, Mr. Dawkins. I appreciate your existence. I do. I'm asking the big question of what's your hope? What do you see as being our hope for the future, so that we can hang on to something while we're having these arguments?
Don't our students ask great questions? Portland State, right on.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I suppose I hope for a world which is in which everybody is rational and believes things only when there is evidence in favor of them, and does not believe things because of tradition, authority, scripture, revelation, but only because of evidence. And quite a lot of people are already in that position, and they're increasing, and I think I want to live in a world where everybody is like that. It's more of a hope than an expectation at present, but I think things are moving in the right direction, and let's all try and make it happen.
Excellent. Last one. We have time for one more. Yes, sir.
Thank you. As someone who reasons so strongly, I'm curious, why do you feel so strongly or seem to feel so strongly about Wilson's turn on inclusive fitness?
Oh, gosh. Do you want that at the very last?
I was just going to, the moment he said that, I said, wow, we have time for one more after that.
I mean, I can do it, but it takes 10 minutes. I mean, I don't think it's sensible to try to this is a fairly esoteric biological question, which I'm very interested in. Well,
it's up to you. Do you want him to do it?
Okay. The theory of inclusive fitness is due to W.D. Hamilton in 1964, and he argued that because genes are shared by collateral kin as well as by lineal kin, cousins and siblings and nephews and nieces, as well as by children and grandchildren, any gene which causes an individual to behave altruistically towards any relative has a chance of being passed on because it is shared, statistically speaking, by that relative, provided that the benefits and costs are favorable. Specifically, RB has to be greater than C, where R is the coefficient of relatedness, which is an index of the number of genes shared. B is the benefit to the beneficiary of the altruism, and C is the cost to the altruist. Now, this principle that Hamilton discovered is actually inherent in the neo-Darwinian synthesis. It follows logically, mathematically, inevitably from the neo-Darwinian synthesis of the 1930s, which all modern biologists accept. You cannot disagree, you cannot say, I don't believe in inclusive fitness, unless you disbelieve in evolution altogether. If you're an evolutionist at all, which Wilson is, this is Edward Wilson, E.O. Wilson, one of the most distinguished living biologists. Wilson is a Darwinian. He accepts the modern synthesis, but he now wants to reject his earlier acceptance of inclusive fitness because he doesn't see direct evidence for it in the animals which were the sort of poster boys for inclusive fitness, namely the social insects. I think he's wrong about the social insects, but even if he's right, all that would mean is that the B and C terms of the formula don't favor altruism in the way that the kin selection, that the inclusive fitness theory would expect. To attempt to disprove the inclusive fitness theory, as opposed to the ordinary Darwinian theory, the classical fitness theory, by looking at real animals would be equivalent to Pythagoras going out with a ruler and measuring hundreds of right-angled triangles to see whether Pythagoras' theorem is correct. Pythagoras' theorem is correct because it is logically proved. You cannot escape Pythagoras' theorem. It's proved once and for all time. All right-angled triangles in a plane surface obey Pythagoras' theorem. All animals and plants obey the law of inclusive fitness. They don't all show altruism towards their siblings or nephews and nieces because the B and C terms in the equation don't favor it. But the R term, that's the index of relatedness, is always there tending to push them in the direction of altruism towards siblings and cousins, etc. But it only actually shows itself if the B and C terms of the equation, which are economic parameters of the ecology of the animal concerned, they have to be favorable as well. So Wilson and his colleague Novak and another colleague wrote a paper. It was published in Nature, in which Wilson sort of took back his earlier enthusiastic acceptance of inclusive fitness. This paper, I mean, I don't like talking in terms of numbers of scientists. We don't do science democratically, but nevertheless it's worth mentioning that I think more than 100 reputable biologists in the field signed a joint paper dissenting from the Wilson view. He's on his own. He's a great man, but he's on his own. And it seems to me that quite apart from the number against him, he's got to be on his own because, as I said, it is a logical deduction from the neo-Darwinian synthesis of Fisher, Haldane, Wright, and the other founders of the neo-Darwinian synthesis, which Wilson accepts. Nothing more to say.